It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
Cool.
6:06 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming, and it is officially a Friday. So I'm really glad you made it, everybody. This is Glenn Woods. So there's a whole lot to cover today, and I'm glad you're joining me to do this. It's open phones all the way. Now, I always have open phones every single day of the week. It's just on Fridays, it's the entire program, unless I have a guest, and there's no guest today. So, all right, a lot to cover. And I'll get to the latest solar farm in Wyoming that you're not going to believe where they're going to put this thing in just a minute or so. But first, I'm going to tell you something that I did yesterday as an experiment, which to me it's hysterical. I tell some people this and they look at me and go, okay, Glenn, you really need to do something with your life. And there's other people who think that this little thought experiment, let's call it science, that I did, actually is interesting. And I got into some discussions with people who thought, wow, I never thought about that before. How would you like to drive across Wyoming? And, you know, we have long highways here, obviously, right? And save a few miles every single trip. Now, I don't advise you actually do this. So what I did, I talked about this yesterday. Last time I'm in Cheyenne right now, broadcasting from Cheyenne. What I did was the last time I drove down here, I was leaving Casper, going to Cheyenne, and I always stop in Chugwater because I have friends there, and I like to go get a burger or a malt, something like that, at Wyoming's oldest soda fountain, right there in Chugwater. Then I visit my friends over at the Tri-County Mercantile. And I thought, well, what if, as I drove down, every time the highway turned, I drove the inside lane. And so I started this little clock in my car that it has on the little computer screen that tracks mileage per trip. So as soon as I got up this one ramp, I immediately set it, and when I got to a certain spot on the off-ramp in Chugwater, I turned it off. The entire way down, every time there was a turn on the interstate, I hugged the inside lane. Now, theoretically, you would think that would save me a few miles, right? Or something? How much? Most people said, well, maybe a quarter mile or a half mile. That maybe 3/4 of a mile at most. I was curious to see what exactly was going to happen. All right. This time, when I drove down, I thought about the rules that I was going to give myself for a minute or so, and I decided the way to do this is I'm going to just stay the way I'm supposed to drive. I'm going to stay in the right-hand lane unless I'm passing somebody. And if I'm passing somebody, then I can go ahead and get in the whatever lane, and whatever the highway is doing, it does. Whether it's turning or going straight, whatever. All right, so sticking with the rules of the road, because that's how you're supposed to drive. When I get to Chugwater, and I got to that same spot, as I get off that particular off-ramp, there's a cattle guard there. Same spot. I stopped at the cattle guard, and I checked my mileage. What surprised me is, when I drive that distance using just the inside track on the turns, I had saved 2 miles between Casper and Chugwater. Just driving the inside track on the turns saved me 2 miles. I didn't expect it to be anywhere near that. Now, just to make sure that I have my numbers right, I have to go back and forth between Casper and Cheyenne a few more times in April. And because I'm a dork, I'll admit it, it's just interesting to me. I'll go ahead and set the mileage again and record it again and see what kind of number I come up with. But wow, that saved me 2 miles. Now I thought, okay, if I was in Nebraska doing the same thing over the same distance, it wouldn't have worked out that way. Because, you know, Nebraska highways, how many turns do they really have? It's mostly just straightaways. So there wouldn't have been that many turns. And if they were, they would have been just slight turns. But that particular stretch in Wyoming, down I-25, has some long turns, which is what I think makes the big difference here. Some of these turns are really long. So if I'm hugging the inside, that's what's making the difference. So, okay, experiment done. And I did write this up as a story on the Wake Up Wyoming site with a couple of little caveats at the end. One, I will be repeating the experiment to make sure I got it right, to make sure those numbers are true, because as with any scientific experiment, it has to be repeated, and you got to get the same result over and over again before you can finally say, that's true. Next, I made sure to put a little note at the bottom, but this is not the way we're supposed to drive. The idea is to stay on the right lane unless you're passing. Now, the only time really I ever drive in the left lane, one, if I'm passing. Two, there are some areas that have because so many vehicles are in the right lane, the area's got so chewed up with potholes and the highway has sunk so you can see sort of ruts in the highway. And man, that's just annoying and not good for my vehicle. It's not good for the road. So you see in those areas, I'll drift over to the left lane and hold it for a while until I get past those rough areas, then I'll go ahead and go back, assuming that at some point, YDOT's going to go in and fix all of that. But that's about the only time you ever see me in the left-hand lane, because I think it's a good idea that we all stay in the same lane unless you're passing somebody. Other than that, I see I-80 John's already getting it. Morning, Glenn. How much longer did it take you? Well, that's an interesting question here. We can do the math on this, and I don't have the mileage in front of me here, but if I was doing 80 miles an hour, so I did the speed limit. And let me see if I can call the number up for you here, John, as long as I'm doing, because you should be able to just do the math in your head and figure out it took me this long to do it. Let's see, that's not that one. Nope, wrong list here. Pardon me, want to go ahead and call it up. Okay, so it was the original mileage when I was tightening the turns was 121.9 miles. Okay? When I did not hug the inside lanes, it was 127.1 miles. So you see, that's a difference of 2 miles when you add it up that way. Right? And so you should be able to run the math to figure out how much longer does it take you. And again, I'm going 80 miles an hour, so there you go. And then you got to ask yourself, how much did I save in gas? Especially at today's gas prices. So basically, I saved 2 miles. I don't know how much I'm getting, because this is a company car here. I don't know how much the company car gets miles per gallon. I'd have to look it up. It's a Nissan Rogue is what it is, whatever they get in miles per gallon. So you can go ahead and add up how much gas I saved. But basically, 2 miles worth of gas at 80 miles an hour. Okay. Interesting experiment. Now, again, John, to be clear, I look at this as interesting. I thought those numbers were really fascinating. And I even want to know, because when I get done here this weekend, I have to leave Cheyenne and go back up to Casper. And so I'm going to do the whole way without the stop in Chugwater and do that again and add up those two numbers to find out what the difference is, because usually there's that stop in Chugwater. But we'll see. If the numbers are consistent, then we can say that this is true. Though I don't think everybody should be driving this way. See, Simple Man in Casper. Morning, Mr. G. Just to let you know, those signs that say stay in the right lane except to pass, that is actually a law, and I'm surprised that Controlman has called up not to, telling you not to do that. Well, to let you know, I did, and I thought about this. I did not do this while there was heavy traffic out there. Well, and what is really heavy traffic for Wyoming anyway? When I first came down when I was driving south doing this, it was during a time when there basically was nobody, not really much of anybody on the road. And when I leave here and I head back up to Casper, it again will be at a time when there's not much of anybody on the road. Because that's why at the end of my article I said, I am not advocating that anybody do this. It's a good idea to stay in your right-hand lane unless you're passing. Or, as I say, unless the right-hand lane is so chewed up and WYDOT hasn't gotten to repairing it yet, you can go ahead and drift over for a little while until you get past that section of road, which usually doesn't last too long. But no, I'm not saying that people should drive this way. I'm in favor of stay in the right-hand lane unless you're passing somebody. All right, 6:16 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Listen to Glenn Woods anywhere you roam with the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. This is AM 1030 K2 Radio.
6:23 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Friday. I'm glad you made it. So yesterday we were talking about some solar farms that have been built around the country that have been just destroyed by hailstorms. There was one in Texas, which was a massive solar farm, and it's just gone because of hailstorm. Why would you put it there where you know hailstorms will hit? There's one that's south of Cheyenne, just over the border in Colorado. That's pretty good size. And I look at the area, I mean, why would you put it there? We know we have big hailstorms out in this area, and the big balls of hail can be pretty good size, golf ball and bigger at times. We know this, so why would you build that solar farm there? Here's the latest Cowboy State Daily. Company to build $155 million solar panel farm in what is called Wyoming's Hale Alley. Why? Okay. Building, the story says, a $155 million farm with hundreds of solar panels in Hale Alley, southeast Wyoming, seems like a crazy idea to some. You think? Well, not to Paul Stroud, director of Cowboy Energy LLC, who sits in safely removed from the worst of the hail in Sheridan, in the northern part of Wyoming. He cited significant hailstorms have swept through Scottsbluff, Nebraska, a solar farm last summer that left behind ding marks and cracked panels with baseball-sized hail. And they know in those areas that these hailstorms happen in those areas, but they still build them there. Another report emerged out of the Houston area, the one I was just talking about a moment ago, with splintered solar panels, big hail balls again. Stroud, a 4-decade veteran of developing geothermal projects around the globe, poo-pooed all of these concerns. Cowboy Energy, the story says, based in Las Vegas, but run by Stroud out of Sheridan, and his partner, a geothermal alternative engineer expert, have teamed up to build what they think will be a hail-resistant solar farm in Goshen County. The backers of this Goshen solar project plan to build nearly 326,000 solar panels spread over 1,200 acres. Before I go on, okay, so if you think about what that does to the animal life in the area, because for those people who really do care, I'm going to put this on hold for just a moment. James in Casper wants to talk about my experiment. Hey, James.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir.
A little modification to you asked about gas mileage and all.
Yes.
If I drive in the same way back and forth, except reduce your speed by 5 miles an hour.
Yes.
You know, set the cruise control, top off when you leave, top off when you get back. That'll give you an idea how much gas you spent, and keep track of your time and find out how much time you really save and how much gas you really use.
Mm-hmm. I have noticed because the company vehicle here, which again is a Nissan Rogue, has in it this calculator that's supposed to give me the mileage. And I noticed that first off, if I'm driving a Wyoming highway and it's really hilly, I mean the big hills, that'll just screw up my gas mileage because the vehicle is always struggling to get up to the next hill. You might think, well, it'll save some on the way back down. Yeah, but it spends more trying to struggle to get up. That's one of the things I noticed right away. Also, I had pulled off on some back highways where these vehicles are 4-cylinders. So my speed drops down from 80 miles an hour to 65 or 70. And according to the vehicle's calculator, well, the gas mileage suddenly gets remarkably better just because I'm going a bit slower like that. But I think, and tell me, because it's always been my understanding, you would know, that driving consistently is one of the biggest savers of gasoline.
True. So you were talking about staying on I-25 between Casper and Cheyenne.
Yeah.
You're on the same highway, going the same speed, even with the hills and the curves and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You top off when you leave.
Yep.
You top off when you get back. You know what time you left and what time you get in. That gives you an idea of time and your gas.
Yep.
Keep track.
I'll tell you one more thing, James, before I got to go because of news time. But one more thing real quick, James. Wind down that highway makes a big difference. I have driven south with a huge tailwind and saved a ton of gas. Driven back north up I-25 with a huge headwind, and oh my Lord, would it cost me to get back north. Thanks for calling in, James. I appreciate it. Coming up on local news, update on your weather forecast. Then you and I get back into it again. And I'll finish the story on these solar panels, why this guy thinks they're going to be hail resistant, just a moment or so. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
And cold.
Now, Glenn Woods fits in your pocket with the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. This is AM 1030 K2 Radio.
So 888-97, what's the phone number? That's 888-97-WOODS. You can talk about what I'm talking about. Change the subject, fine by me. Okay, so talking about solar panels, there's a company that wants to put up 326,000 solar panels in Goshen County. This is just about southwest of Yoder, about an hour's drive from Cheyenne. All right. And he said, and this is called Hail Alley. Chet from Yoder, who lives out there, will tell you, yeah, it's pretty bad when it comes to hail. So why put it there? All right. He says, the panels will be thicker with ceramic coatings and have better construction overall than Nebraska hail damage panels, which were much thinner. Importantly, the Cowboy Energy and Green Volt panels can be tipped over via computerized controls to protect them from being bannered on the surface from big hail balls. He said it'll be beneficial for ranchers. The company has around 17 solar farms, protects various stages of development. Solar farm proposed for the Cowboy Energy and Green Volt is their first in Wyoming. And the story says will represent one of the largest aggregate sites in the state. It's used for both, these particular solar panels are used for both agriculture and solar generation. The Florida-based Bright Night LLC wants to develop a 500-megawatt solar farm near Glen Rock, Wyoming, in a way to also allow sheep to graze on the same land. I would like to see how that works because wherever I've seen solar farms, they take up an enormous amount of land. So I'd like to see what's their proposal to make sure cattle and sheep and so on can still graze there when you're using so much land to do this. Which is one of the reasons also I like coal and natural gas plants because their footprint is so much smaller than wind farms and solar farms. So, okay. Beef cattle and other crops struggling with long-term drought in the region, but the solar panels will help retain more water on the land, he says. Quote, we'll be taking posts and pile driving them into the ground and leave a little extra height to let the sheep graze under them. Well, I want to know, though, okay, so the sheep are grazing under them, but is there anything to graze under if the solar panels are shielding the sun? Because in order to have all that grass there, don't you need sunlight hitting the ground? Again, I want to see how they intend to do this, because my understanding is not only do you need the water, but you need sunlight hitting the ground. So you can go ahead and put these panels up higher so the animals can get underneath, but is there sunlight hitting the ground to help the grass grow? He said, right now we don't have any sheep, but we're still trying to figure out that based on optimal stocking rates per acre. He says we also want to help other farmers graze sheep on our land during the growing season. He also says he may end up selling off some of his beef cattle with other things to work with the sheep. Okay, so the story goes on with a few more things, but this is basically, it's an experiment that's supposed to be a big solar farm in Hale Alley. Judy is on the line. Morning, Judy.
Good morning, and I saw that last night, and I was like, are we going to go down this road again? We have baseball-sized hail in Wyoming. I have seen it dent the cars, the trucks. Hell, we had 2 trucks destroyed by hail. And they got the one in Bar 9 they're putting in, too. You know, the subsidies on this stuff has got to stop. And any of our legislators that voted for these subsidies need to be kicked out. You know, I'm tired of paying for a private business. Where's my money? You know?
Right.
Secondly, it's just 2,000-something acres. People, when those get broken, you know where Casper is the only place that takes wind towers and possibly the solar panels. So all of those broken panels are going to end up here in Casper. I suggest everyone get on board and kill this project, because do you know what's inside of these panels? It's poison, it's mercury, it's silver, it's what's the other one? Cobalt, or is it cobalt or lithium? I can't remember.
I do know for those people who would love to have, again, the solar panels and want to keep it in the ground, oil in the ground and coal in the ground, you cannot make solar panels without using coal and petroleum products. It's not possible to do it.
Yep, you're correct on that. I don't know. We got to do some major house cleaning in our legislation this year. We should be able to have special sessions on everything that was vetoed. That's what they're paid for, and that's what they were elected for, was to represent the public. And it looks like we're not real happy. Okay. I watched all of that all week long, and I could fall asleep in any given moment because of all the boring, stupid stuff that was brought to the fore and not the important issues. So, anyway, there's Friday for you to think about.
Right. I got to run. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Judy. 6:42 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Local and mobile across Wyoming and beyond with the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. This is AM 1030 K2 Radio.
6:48 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off we go to talk to Frank Gambino with sports. Okay, Frank, I'm not going to dwell on this a lot today, but I got to bring you in on the conversation. So I have the numbers from my road experiment.
And did you save a mile?
I saved more than a mile, which
How
really
much did you
surprised me.
save?
Now, just to let everybody know, let me set this up, Frank, is when I tried this, I wasn't riding the inside lane of the interstate during a heavy traffic time. I did this when there was almost nobody on the road. But every time I made a turn, the interstate turned, I would ride the inside track between Casper and Jugwater.
Okay.
The next time, yesterday, I stayed in the right-hand lane unless I needed to pass someone, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I saved 2 miles.
Whoa.
That's what I said. Now, I will be running this experiment again just to double-check those numbers. But that's what I came up with. But if you think about it, you've driven that many times.
So this would be a roughly a mile every 80 miles?
I guess.
80 yeah. But maybe 75 miles is what's 100 to Wheatland?
Yeah.
And then...
But now, let's think about also when you're driving this area of I-25, there's a lot of really long turns.
Yes.
I think that's what made the difference. Because if we were in Nebraska doing this, that wouldn't have happened.
It's straight, yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't have saved much at all. We would be lucky if we saved a quarter of a mile. But in Wyoming, in an area where there's a lot of really big long turns, you can save much more than that.
2 miles.
2 miles. Now, again, that was my initial test. I have to go back and forth between Cheyenne and Casper a few more times over the next month here. And so, traffic permitting, I'll run that experiment again to see what I come up with. Also, just because there's people who are really interested in this, and there's other people who look at me and just basically go, Glenn, really, this is what you do with your life?
Yes, and that needs your experiment and your results need to be peer reviewed.
Peer reviewed, okay.
Or it's worthless.
Okay.
So that means I got to do it now.
Yeah, great. Let's go with sports.
All righty. In women's junior college basketball, Casper College was eliminated from the national tournament at the Ford Center in Casper last night, losing to Northwest Florida State 76 to 69, in front of over a big crowd of CC supporters. The T-Birds had a great start in the game, hitting 7 3-pointers in the first quarter and shot 66% from the floor in the first half, but a 13-point lead quickly evaporated as Casper endured just a brutal shooting performance in the second half, going 4 of 23 from the field. That's 17%. They were led by Anna Cheney with 20 and Andy Schuster with 17. T-Birds had a good season. They finished the year 29-6. Also at the national tournament yesterday, the Gila Monsters from Eastern Arizona beat Collin College, the 4th seed, 61-60. Gulf Coast from Florida over Southern Idaho, 65-55. And Three Rivers, Missouri over Shelton State from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, 68-50. Today at the Ford Center, the top seed Hutchinson, Kansas will play New Mexico Junior College at noon. Wabash Valley from Illinois takes on Odessa, Texas at 2:15. Gulf Coast meets Eastern Arizona at 4:30, and at 6:45, it's Northwest Florida meeting Three Rivers. In women's college basketball at the Division I level, the Wyoming Cowgirls will host South Dakota in the Super 16 of the WNIT tonight in Laramie. Cowgirls are 17-14 after a 16-point win over Texas San Antonio in the second round of the WNIT back on Sunday. South Dakota is 23-12, and they down Northern Arizona in the second round. That's a 6:30 start from the AA tonight. At the men's NCAA basketball tournament, the Mountain West Conference is out as San Diego State was humiliated by Connecticut 82-52. UConn is the top seed in the tournament. They looked every bit like the defending national champions. The first number 1 seeds out, that's North Carolina, who lost to Alabama 89-87. Illinois edged Iowa State 72-69. Clemson bounced Arizona, a 2 seed, 77-72. And some intriguing games today as Purdue, a number 1 seed, will play Gonzaga. Houston, a 1 seed, tangles with Duke. Marquette will take on North Carolina State, and Tennessee plays Creighton. Major League Baseball, how bad are the Colorado Rockies going to be this year? Check this out. On opening day on the road, they lost Arizona 16-1. The Diamondbacks scored 14 runs in the third inning. 14 runs. The Rockies starting pitcher Kyle Freeland was awful. He surrendered 10 hits and 10 earned runs in 2 1/3 innings of work. Hey, there's only 161 games to go. That's it in sports.
Wow, 161 games to lose. Okay, here's the thing, Frank. You said you thought that they might even start off like not all that bad and then get suckier as they go.
No, they've started the bar low, where it was last year.
Yeah.
So, as we said, improvement is the name of the game.
All right.
So maybe the next game, as opposed to losing 16-1, if they lost 15-1, that's improvement.
See, I think that they will. I'm sticking with what I said yesterday. They're going to suck just a little bit more than they did last year, just to prove that they really didn't go as low as they could possibly go.
Yeah, it all starts from the top, Glenn. Ownership, really, the current ownership just needs to sell the team and let everyone move on.
And does it look like they're going to do that?
Probably not.
Okay. All right.
Unless me and you want to buy the team.
No. It's just a big waste of money. Coming up on Local Business. News time after that. It's open phones. It's a Friday. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Time is 7:06. It's a Friday, and I'm so glad you made it. Okay, now, Miss Mary, hang on a second. I got to chat with Miss Mary. Now I am hearing myself back. We now return you to another thrilling episode of Social Justice Warrior. On this week's episode, the bad guy is getting away. If only the Social Justice Warrior had his own version of the Batmobile. But, you know, more like a Eco-mobile or something like that.
Okay, hang on a second. Hang on.
Whatever.
And we should be coming back here. Oh, she's playing. I hear what you're playing there, Miss Mary. Now it says we're connected. Are we okay? Okay. Because I heard what you are back. Are you getting enough volume from me right now? All right, we're having a little bit of a problem with the unit. Yes, you are. Okay, good. I think I found the sweet spot where I can save my hearing but send you enough. But I'm going to have to keep an eye on this thing if it suddenly dropped out like that, because it did that to us once before. Okay. 888-97-WOODS, the phone number, 888-97-WOODS. You can talk about what I'm talking about or change the subject. That's just fine by me. So you know I am in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and broadcasting back to Miss Mary, who's sending the signal out to you. And this thing had some little problem. Okay. Well, all right. Yeah, I think the connection just dropped on us. All right. Off to the next topic here. Now that we've dealt with all the technical issues. The Democrats are still pushing a wealth tax. Now, this is a subject that I love because it shows, once again, that these are people who don't understand what wealth is. And we're talking about people like our current president, Bernie Sanders, and Senator Pocahontas. Those, to name three, they don't understand what money is or how it works. And let me explain it first before I get into their idea of a wealth tax, how this works. There is a difference between money and wealth. You can have a lot of cash, but not be wealthy. You can be very wealthy, but not have a lot of cash. For example, recently, Donald Trump, they were trying to get him, what was it, $450 million to pay in that court case. And in order to get $450 million, he would have to liquidate some things. He would have to sell some things to get the cash. See, Donald Trump is wealthy, but most of his money, the vast majority of the billions that he has, is tied up in various businesses and real estate holdings and stock. So you see, that's where his wealth is, which doesn't leave a lot of cash on hand. Then again, you can have a whole big stack of cash in your house, but you don't own anything. Therefore, you have cash, but you're not wealthy. So they want a wealth tax. And they continue to say, well, we're going to tax the rich. Now, what's funny to me, it's not surprising though, Bernie Sanders used to say, we got to go after those millionaires and billionaires, until he became a millionaire, and now he only talks about billionaires. Because you don't have to come after him, right? But they still want to tax the wealthy. Well, let's take a look at what happens when we actually tax wealth. So if you want to go after, if some guy is worth billions of dollars, I've said this to you before, remember, a billionaire does not have bank vaults with piles of cash and gold bullion and things like that stacked in it. That's not how this works. A billionaire has, like Trump has, holdings in real estate and businesses and stocks and bonds and stuff like that. That's where the money is. So you want to go ahead and tax the billionaires. Well, in order to give you that money, he's going to have to start selling stuff off. And that's going to cost jobs and hurt the economy. Now, if the guy was just rich, remember there's a difference between rich and wealth. Two different things. If he was just rich and he had billions of dollars in cash, well, that money's not helping anybody. He's just sitting there in a bank vault. So go ahead, take a bunch of his cash. So what? Doesn't really affect anybody. But if the guy is wealthy, meaning he owns businesses and stocks and bonds and so on in other businesses, in order to liquidate, to get the money that they want, it's going to cost jobs and hurt the economy because he's going to have to sell stuff off and shut stuff down. And that's what they don't understand. So here's the story that's in front of me. Earlier this month, the White House pushed a fact sheet about President Biden's latest budget plan. What are the items offered that is a laundry list? Requires billionaires pay at least 25% of income tax. Billionaires make their money in ways that are often taxed at lower rates than ordinary income, or sometimes not taxed at all, thanks to giant loopholes. Well, hang on a second now. Let's take a look at, here again, it's their own tax structure. These people invented this tax structure, but they don't understand it. Let's take a businessman who has a very successful business that makes him, I'm going to pick a number. It makes him $3 million a year. That doesn't mean that he has $3 million a year. The business is worth that much in the kind of business that it does. The owner of the business will pay himself a salary out of that, just like he is an employee. In fact, I know several business owners in Wyoming, several. Their employees actually make more than they do based on the salary they pay themselves. So the business is worth quite a bit, but they pay themselves like an employee. So when it comes to tax time, their personal income tax is not as high as you might think. The guy's making $3 million a year. He must pay a lot of income tax. No, that's his business. Personally, he pulls a salary, and that's what he pays income tax on. But okay, the Democrats are saying there's giant loopholes and tax preferences that disproportionately benefit the wealthiest taxpayers. As a result, many of these wealthy Americans are able to pay an average income tax of just 8% on their full incomes, a lower rate than many. See, again, this is not true when you understand how the tax structure really works. Biden proposes to raise about $503 billion over the next decade by imposing a 25% tax on people who claim more than $100 million in assets. Okay, now, what this will do is drive a lot of, I can say this with confidence because it's done it before. So I'm not saying anything that I don't know because this is what's happened. You try taxing people like this and they will leave. If that means leave the country, they'll leave. And we can see the same thing on a local level. People are leaving Illinois, California. People are leaving New York. We can name a few other states. And they're going to those places that don't tax them as much. Now, those on the left would say, well, that's greedy. It is not greedy to want to keep what you earned honestly. If you worked for it and earned it honestly, it is not greedy to want to keep what's yours. What's greedy is those people in government who want to get a hold of it and use it for whatever projects they want to use it for. That's what greed is. And at the same time, these Democrats never stop and think for a moment, hey, what if we just spent less money? Hey, hang on, we'll get into that in just a minute. 7:15. Wake Up Wyoming.
If it's happening in Wyoming, it's on Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods from K2 Radio. Join the conversation at 888-97-WOODS.
7:20 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. 888-97-WOODS, the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. Okay, I just got into a story where, once again, the Biden administration and many Democrats want to tax the rich. And I'm going through what that actually means as far as taxing the rich and what kind of effect it would really have. And then the accusation, well, they're taking advantage of all of these loopholes. Hang on, I'll get to that. First off, besides calling the show at 888-97-WOODS, you can text me. If you download the Wake Up Wyoming app, that's free at your app store, it's all free. One of the many options, you'll see chat. Pop the chat button, send me a text message. So Smalls in Casper sends me this note. My mother used to say it's their money, they earned it, they can do what they want with it. And yeah, as long as they earn it honestly, it's theirs. And it's not greedy to want to keep what you earned honestly. And if you're worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, that's okay. That doesn't mean that other people are poor because you're rich. It doesn't work that way. Think of it this way. It's an analogy I came up with, and I'm very proud of it. So, in a socialist country, everybody works in creating one big pie. That's the theory. And then government's going to come along and equally slice everybody an equally sized slice of the pie. Well, first off, you know what happens when people are going to get a slice of pie no matter what. They don't bother working and adding in their share. And so the pie is going to be much smaller. And then through government ineptitude, since government's running everything, the pie is going to be even smaller. Then when government begins to cut up the pie, you know that's not going to be distributed equally. Those people at the top are going to give themselves the most, and their cronies are going to get the second most, and everybody else gets crumbs. And that's socialism. And that's not a theory. If you doubt me, remember, there's only one fat man in North Korea. Same is true for China, the old Soviet Union, and Venezuela. That is how that works. But in a country like ours, if we're truly a capitalist country, you are responsible for making your own pie. So, if you have a tiny little pie, that's your fault. But if you're sitting on a huge apple pie, I mean big thing, steaming, a la mode too, let's put ice cream on it. Well, it's because that's what you made for yourself. Okay? And that's okay that you have that. And if somebody has a tiny little pie and they're looking at your big pie and they're envious of you, well, they need to do what you did. Work harder. It's okay that they're rich, as long as they did it honestly. Blue Eyes and Douglas, those that are complaining are some of the richest. They are part of that group. I bet they use loopholes. Yes, a lot of the Democrats who are complaining about all these evil loopholes. Well, you're rich. Do you take advantage of these loopholes? I bet you do. I bet you do. You're the one who created these loopholes. A lot of you Democrats. And then you take advantage of them. But then complain when other people do. But then there's one more. I like this. I-80 John there in Granite Canyon. The best response to taxing the rich is from the Trump-Hillary debate. So let me, John, basically give the Reader's Digest version of what happened there. Trump and Hillary Clinton were debating, and Hillary was talking about taxing the rich and so on, and how Trump took advantage of all of these loopholes. And Trump just flat out said, well, of course I did. These loopholes are in our tax code, and they're legal. I didn't do anything wrong. I took advantage of the legal loopholes that our federal government provided for me. Why wouldn't I take advantage of them? Of course I did. He didn't do anything wrong. That doesn't make him immoral. That's perfectly okay to do that. Government provided loopholes in the tax code for people like him, and he took advantage of it. What do you expect him to do? Not? Of course he's going to take advantage of it. All right, story says, Biden proposed to raise $503 billion over the next decade by imposing a 25% tax on those who claim more than $100 million in assets. Well, okay, my thought is, hey, what if you just spent less? Because, the Biden administration and the Democrats continue to talk about all the wonderful things that they want government to do, which is more and more government and more spending, and they need more and more, and the deficit keeps getting bigger. They need more and more money to do this. So they keep going after all of this money that other people have earned, as if those other people don't have a right to that money. Well, they do have a right to that money. And to think about it, that old saying, a rising tide raises all boats. Well, someone does not become a billionaire unless he's brought a lot of other people with him. You can become a billionaire on your own. In order for a person to be a billionaire, he's surrounded by people who are worth hundreds of millions of dollars that made that money helping him become a billionaire. And there's other millionaires around them and other people who earn six-figure incomes, and on the way down it goes. Yeah, that billionaire is a billionaire because of all the people that he employs who make various different kinds of salaries. They're doing well because of him. If you want to wealth tax him, That billionaire is going to have to sell off a bunch of assets, and a bunch of those people that I just mentioned are going to be out of work. Paul says, if we have to serve on jury duty for $30 per day, these politicians, those political hacks, need to serve on for the same amount. Yeah. No coming out of office wealthy. And I agree with that. Drives me nuts when I see politicians. If you might think, hey, you know, my congressman, my senator, they make a lot of money. They not really. Oh, no, you might look at it and think, that's a good amount of money. Yeah, but they have to maintain a home in their home state and also have a place in Washington, D.C. It can be expensive to be a member of Congress. Yet, when they retire, they all come home worth tens of millions of dollars. Now, how does that happen? That's what we all wonder about. Which, if it were up to me, your Congress would not be making really much more. We would be doing what we do here in Wyoming. Give them a little per diem to cover some basic costs. And then Congress would only be in session for just a little while every single year. We would not have a full-time Congress. That's the way I would do it. Then I would also strip a lot of their power so they can't go making all of that money in the first place. In general, I would make Congress nowhere near as powerful as it is today. All right, coming up on some local news we have to take care of. After local news, update on your weather forecast. Then you and I get back into it again. 7:45, Don Day and I are going to have a conversation about the weather. This weekend's forecast for Easter is really kind of weird and squirrely. And we'll talk about that again at 7:45. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. That's 888-97 WOODS. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
You asked for an expert. We didn't have the budget for that. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. and 24/7 on the Wake Up Wyoming app.
7:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. 888-97 WOODS. So I'm just going to do something else, but I'll go one more thing on the whole tax the rich that the Democrats really want, another wealth tax. They even have had in the past a windfall profit tax. So in other words, if a company, something happens, right, and they suddenly make just a lot of money because something, in fact, it was one case when it was the oil industry, when things suddenly went right for the oil industry from their perspective, and they made just a bunch of money. Now, nothing bad had happened to the consumer. We were fine. But they just made a bunch of money. Well, that's not fair. That's a windfall. And so in government, they thought that they had the right to take that money. Well, it didn't happen. It didn't work out that way. But that's something that, once again, hypocritical members of Congress will yell and scream, you made so much money. That's okay. Look, I have met people over the years who, and it's really heartbreaking for me to say this, but let's face it, we've all met people. They're just not all that smart, and they don't make the best decisions. And so they're not going to go very far in life. But, you know, they're in America, so they'll do okay. Because by American standards, you know, if at least you apply yourself a little bit, you can have a decent house or at least apartment. You can live comfortable. You have air conditioning. You have food in your belly. You're doing okay. And most of the rest of the world would love to live like that. So that's okay. It's okay to be middle class. And for those people who are smart enough and apply themselves in the right way and become ultra successful, you know, there was a time in this country when we would congratulate those people. And we all wanted to be like them. Now, again, as long as you did it honestly, that's okay. Why is it when someone wins the lotto Everybody pats them on the back and congratulates them. But if somebody starts from pretty much nothing and works themselves up to the point where they're really ultra rich or wealthy, there are those who will look down on that. Well, you shouldn't, because again, in order to be that well off, you had to help everybody else along the way. What about all of those employees? What about all the money? Yes, there's a lot of tax money that helps the economy. And a lot of these mega rich people also donate a lot to their community on their own. Not necessarily even just because of tax breaks, but just because they have all of this money, they give a lot to their community. These are the people who build the community. It's good to have them around. People who are that successful, it's good to have them around. And not treat them like they're evil or try to punish them because they're doing so well. So for those people who are not doing so well, I would love to teach them how to get up on their feet and do what they can do to put themselves in a better situation. We're not all going to be rich, but you can at least be better off than you are right now. What we don't need is someone coming along and punishing success, which is a big part of what I find your Democrat Party doing is punishing successful people for being successful. That's where I go back and say, look, as long as you did it honestly, good for you if you got stinking rich. Now, at the same time, let's take a look at members of Congress like your Ocasio-Cortez, your Senator Pocahontas, your Bernie Sanders type. What have they ever produced? Mega rich people got rich because they produce stuff that you and I want or need. That's what made them so wealthy, because they're producing stuff that you and I want or need, or a little bit of both. When we look at certain members of Congress, let's take a look at a Bernie Sanders type. What has he ever really produced of any kind of value that helps anybody? Nothing. And yet, even he is worth millions of dollars right now. But he's never produced anything. Same thing with Senator Pocahontas. To look at her life, what has she ever really produced? Nothing. If we were to take them out of Congress and put them back on the street and say, okay, go ahead, do something with your life, what do you think would happen? I don't really think that they would not. In fact, even our own President Biden, what has he ever produced? He wouldn't know how to. I often said that about Obama. Take Obama, who thinks he's such a smart guy, and let's go put him in charge of a retail store in a mall or a convenience store somewhere, and let's see how long before that place goes bankrupt. Because he has no idea how things really work. He's never done it before. He's never actually produced anything. And yet, he gets really mad at the producers and he wants to take from them. Bernie Sanders and Obama want to take from these really rich, wealthy people. For what reason? Because they couldn't do it themselves. Do you think it's envy because they don't think they can do it themselves? I wonder sometimes if that's it. 7:42. Let's get Don Day on the line. We'll talk weather for this Easter weekend. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Where Wyoming comes to talk. This is Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Be part of the show at 888-97-WOODS.
7:45 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. We got Don Day on the line.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm glad you're there. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story that you're just going to love, Don. So yesterday, a friend of mine held up his phone to my face and said, well, the weekend weather is supposed to do this. And I laughed at him.
Yes, you should.
Yes, okay. Because this really is, as in your own words from your podcast this morning, this is a mess. It's not going to be horrible, but it is just a mess.
Yeah, it's going to have a little bit of everything. For those of you that like some rain, you'll get some rain. For those of you who like snow, you'll get some. We have moments where the sun will come out, moments where it'll be cloudy. We're looking at a storm that's basically going to just sit off the coast of California all weekend and all the way into late Sunday and early Monday before it begins to move east. And it's kind of like a pea shooter. It's just going to be shooting little spit wads of weather our way off and on between now and early Monday morning. So we'll have a wave of moisture come in. It'll rain and snow on the plains, snow in the high country. There'll be a break. Then it will do it again. It's going to just off and on a period of weather between now and Monday where this is going to happen. It's going to be really hard to give you the exact timing of these events, other than don't expect it to be setting up where it starts to rain and snow and just keeps going. There'll be breaks, but over time and across the state, not only will we have these waves of moisture, but temperatures will gradually go down, most noticeable Sunday into Monday. So you're going to encounter just about everything if you're going to be out and about this weekend.
Can you give us a little something on Easter Sunday? Because I know people, are always looking forward to a holiday. Is that at its worst on Easter Sunday, or is it still just squirrely? It's at its worst. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be the coldest and the cloudiest, and the showers will be, especially across the north and the central parts of the state. There actually may be a little bit of good weather in the southeast early Easter Sunday morning, but again, it's going to be hard to pin all this down because of these little waves coming on through. What will happen with these waves is you get moisture. The air sinks behind them. You get a break where the weather clears out a bit, and then you wait for the next one to come on through, and that pattern just repeats itself. So when you get behind these waves, you have a little break in the weather. So variety of weather, variety is the spice of life, right?
Yeah. All right. Now, just real quick, just for me personally here, if I'm in Cheyenne now and I'm planning to go to Casper, when should I leave?
Really any time during the day today.
Okay.
Don't drive at night is my rule of thumb this time of year if you don't have to. As long as you get out during the daylight hours. There's going to be some developing showers, first in the south today, then moving north as the night wears on. So get out by mid to late afternoon and be just fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Off we go to talk to Frank Gambino. Hey, Frank, I have a tick update.
Okay, did somebody find 55 ticks instead of 53?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so there have been some places people have found a bunch of ticks because it's going to be a pretty big tick year. Well, according to a story I found in Cowboy State Daily, Goshen County couple were alarmed about their tick infestation, but then they found a cure for it. So they've got a bunch of chickens. They have guinea fowl is what they have. These little birds who are delicious, by the way, love to go around pecking at insects everywhere. And suddenly the tick population is next to nothing.
All right, I'll buy a box of those.
Yes, you see, if you're worried about the tick population where you live, get a bunch of guinea fowls. I wondered if chickens do the same thing. DJ up in Gillette, if you're there, you can let us know. She has chickens. Do they love to go pecking at ticks? And then what if the fowl gets a tick themselves? Or the
other birds will eat the tick off the other birds.
I hope so.
And then we can watch it and go tick, tick, tick.
See, we moved out here in 2020. We had at least one tick every single day. Then we got the guinea fowls, and that was the answer to the problems. And now it's extraordinarily rare if they ever get one. Now, I wonder, though, that's fine if you live out, in some place where you can keep animals like that because you got a farm somewhere in Wyoming. I don't think you should keep them if you have an apartment. I'm just tossing that out there, Frank.
No. And then you can get rid of the ticks with like a flamethrower. Would that be cool?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Well, okay.
Or like,
I'm in favor of the flamethrower idea. I kind of like the idea.
Napalm or something?
Napalm. Anything that has to do with fire or explosions, I'm totally in favor of, Frank. I think that'd be a great idea. Though I would like to find out a little bit more about where do these ticks tend to hang out here in Wyoming. Because where I'm from, again, more Everglades kind of a thing, we just don't go under the trees because they're up there waiting to drop down.
Oh, they live in trees.
Yeah, they climb all sorts of trees, bushes, and they're waiting to drop down on their victims. But here in Wyoming, I guess they're just there in the grass waiting to attach to your legs or something.
Yeah, you're supposed to be wearing socks and long pants when you're kind of out there so they can kind of stay away from you.
Okay. Your tick-proof socks.
Yes.
Okay. Then maybe, that get chicken away. Maybe also tuck your pants into your socks, something like that.
Something like that,
go ahead and do it. Okay, go with sports.
All right, women's junior college basketball, and Casper College was eliminated from the national tournament at the Ford Center in Casper last night, losing to Northwest Florida State 76-69 in front of another big crowd of CC supporters. T-Birds had a great start to the game. They hit 7 3-pointers in the first quarter and shot 66% from the floor in the first half, but a 13-point lead evaporated as Casper endured a brutal brutal shooting performance in the second half, going 4 of 23 from the field, and that's 17%. They were led in scoring by Anna Cheney with 20 and Andy Schischler with 17. T-Birds finished the year 29-6. Also at the national tournament yesterday, the Gila Monsters from Eastern Arizona beat Collin College, the 4th seed, 61-60. Gulf Coast from Florida over Southern Idaho, 65-55. And Three Rivers, Missouri beat Shelton State from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, 68-50. Today at the Ford Center, the top seed Hutchinson, Kansas will play New Mexico Junior College at noon. Wabash Valley from Illinois takes on Odessa, Texas at 2:15. Gulf Coast meets Eastern Arizona at 4:30, and at 6:45, it's Northwest Florida meeting Three Rivers. Women's college basketball at the Division I level, the Wyoming Cowgirls will host South Dakota in the Super 16 of the WNIT tonight at 6:30. The Cowgirls are 17-14 after a 16-point win over Texas San Antonio in the second round of the WNIT back on Sunday. South Dakota is 23-12 and down Northern Arizona in the second round. That is a 6:30 start tonight for the AA in Laramie. At the men's NCAA basketball tournament, the Mountain West Conference is out. San Diego State was humiliated by Connecticut, 82-52. UConn is the top seed in the tournament, and they looked every bit like the defending national champions. The first number 1 seed is out. That's North Carolina, who lost to Alabama 89-87. Illinois edge Iowa State 72-69. Clemson bounced Arizona, 2 seed 77-72. There's some intriguing games today as Purdue, a 1 seed, plays Gonzaga. Houston, a 1 seed, tangles with Duke. Marquette draws North Carolina State, and Tennessee plays Creighton. Major League Baseball, how bad are the Colorado Rockies going to be this year? Check this one out. On opening night on the road at Arizona last night, they lost to Arizona 16-1. The Diamondbacks scored 14 runs in the third inning. That's the most runs in a single inning on opening day since 1900. Rocky starting pitcher Kyle Freeland was just awful. He surrendered 10 hits and 10 earned runs in 2 and third innings of work. Hey, there's only 161 more games to go, and I'll bet you the Rockies ticket prices will be cheap. The beer better be cheap, too.
I bet you we can probably sell the team at an ultra low price. What do you think they're going for about
it? Well, you probably, I think it would start maybe with a B.
Yeah, well, okay, but a small B?
Yeah, like a 1B maybe? Small
maybe,
B.
Yeah, small B. Not a big B, but a small
B. Yeah.
That's right, yeah. If we can get them down into the 100 million range, maybe we can raise some money and buy them ourselves.
No. We need financing, Glenn. Big time financing.
Look, we need financing to buy a ticket to go there, okay?
Yeah, well, not at this rate. I think we can afford it. Be 2 for 1.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. Coming up on some local business we got to take care of. We're going to roll into news time after that. National, local update on your weather forecast. You and I get back into it again with open phones, 888-97 Woods. It's Wake Up Wyoming. The time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me Friday. Glad you made it. Keep an eye on that weather forecast because here I'll go ahead and use a different word than Don Day did when he updated us on the weather just a few minutes ago. The weather for this holiday weekend is going to be stupid. You know that old saying, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes? Yeah, okay, that's going to be this weekend. And the worst of it is going to be Easter Sunday as far as just constantly changing whatever is going to happen. So whatever the app on your phone says, don't even bother. It's just, you're going to get a little bit of everything. All right, 888-97 Woods the phone number. That's 888-97 WOODS. You can talk about what I'm talking about, change the subject. That'll be fine by me. I'll just kind of roll with it. All right, back to Wyoming here. Latest on a possible special session for the Wyoming House and Senate, because the governor did veto quite a few things during the course of this last legislative session, and your House and Senate had already gone home when the governor was still vetoing things. Now, some of those were big items, and people were not happy. So because of that, especially the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, there were those who were calling for a special session. Now, the leadership, which would be the president of the House, Ogden Driscoll, and also, president of the Senate, Ogden Driscoll, Speaker of the House as well, and those two said they would not be in favor of a special session unless it was just over one issue. There was a tax bill. The governor did sign a lot of property tax relief, but there was one in particular that he vetoed. And so that's where these gentlemen would like to see that bill addressed. And if a special session was just about that bill, they would be in favor of it. But the way this really works, and I was wondering about the process here, over the next couple of days we should find out. We'll see. We'll just have to find out what they do. But that's where they vote. If they get more than 50%, then we're going to have a special session. And part of it is a negotiation over what the session will be about. So first they ask, do you want to have a special session? There's a vote on that. About what particularly? Because they could have a special session that runs as long as this last session and takes on all sorts of things. Or they could limit it. But limit it to what exactly? There are those who would like to take a look at every single veto from the governor and go through them. And then again, there's those who would like it just over one thing. So one of the stories I have in front of me, this story is, let me see, lawmakers are weighing the prospects of a special session in a joint op-ed written on Wednesday. Senate President Ogden Driscoll, Republican Devil's Tower, and House Speaker Mr. Summers, Republican Pinedale, said the special session would likely run between 8 and 10 days and would cost about $35,000 a day. And you might go, $35,000 a day? Well, first off, you got to bring everybody in town. And so your members of the House and Senate, your elected officials, don't make money on this. They get a per diem so they can get themselves a place to stay, fuel, meals. Okay, but the Capitol has all sorts of staff. Some of those people have to be brought in. There's some people who are permanent staff at the Capitol. There's other people who have to be brought in. And so that's where you get $35,000 a day. And I have no idea what the electric bill is. But anyway, Driscoll and Summers said the legislators who are pushing for a special session created delay after delay during the budget session by asking for roll calls, trying to resurrect dead bills, bringing procedural motions, filibustering. Quote, we had plenty of time in our established calendar to pass bills and do veto overrides, the legislative leader said in the op-ed. And in doing so, those lawmakers squandered precious time. The Freedom Caucus legislative leaders were referring to members of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus in a letter. March 23rd, the caucus members accused lawmakers of adjourning the session early. Now, this is where I had originally said on the air that they left, the session ended like 3 days early. Well, that's because there were members of the House of Representatives who had said so. That's where I got that from. Then I got a call from a member of the House who said, no, we did not adjourn early. So my answer is, will you guys fight it out and come up with the answer? Did you or didn't you? And get back to me on what you decide? I don't think they're ever going to decide. The decision of legislative readership and adjournment early serves as an open invitation to Governor Gordon, says the Freedom Caucus, to veto measures important to the people of Wyoming with no recourse. They took issue with Gordon's veto on bills that would repeal gun-free zones, provide homeowners with tax exemptions, and regulate abortions, among other things. So in closing, caucus members said the legislative leaders had evaluated the governor to the position, elevated him, of empirical king, and they make all sorts of other accusations like that. Okay. Which I'm just kind of passing over that because at some point we get into both sides arguments and rhetoric, and I'm just kind of sick of it, and I'm really not interested in this. So at first my thought was a special session. Probably not. It's really hard to do. Now I don't think we'll have a special session. And here's where we had, again, the President of the Senate, Speaker of the House say, no, we're not going to do a special session. But then there came more of a push for it. And even at one point, the leaders of the House and Senate said, well, we would be in favor of it. And it seemed like a big flip-flop. But they're saying we would be in favor of it if it was over this one thing. So now the vote has to be taken. At this point, I'm beginning to think, well, we could actually have a special session. It's looking more and more likely that could actually happen, especially over those gubernatorial vetoes. The question will become, A special session over what exactly? And this is what they have to nail down. So how long it takes them to go through this, it should just be, I would think, just a few days, maybe sometime next week. We find out if we're going to have a special session or not. But also, in speaking to certain members of the House of Representatives, in nailing down what the session is about might take just a little bit longer. So sometime next month, maybe, if they go ahead and do this, sometime next month we could end up having a special session. Then it's a matter of making sure everybody's rallied together, because the purpose would be to override the governor's vetoes. It would be making sure everybody is in line to do so. Imagine they got together and weren't able to override a single veto. I don't know what the case is going to be. I have no idea. But they're going to have to make sure that in one way or another, they're organized and ready to override certain vetoes. So again, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Oh, one quick other note. I'm not going to go through it all, but it was interesting to me. Your Secretary of State, Chuck Gray, every time the governor had vetoed something, he would send a notice as to why he vetoed something to the Secretary of State. Well, Chuck Gray wrote, I think it was like a 6-page letter in response to everything the governor said. And, Chuck Gray is very outspoken, so strongly disagreed with the governor. And I haven't read all of that yet, but I think it's kind of an interesting read to see how the Secretary of State responds to the governor in that sense, and then how all of this gets hashed out. And basically, when we're done with this whole session, there were some people who were just not happy. Well, there was a lot of fighting going on. It was more tense than other sessions that I've seen in quite a while. There was not a get-along attitude like I've seen before. There was a lot more controversy over certain issues and political headbutting, if you will, like I haven't seen in quite a few years. 8:15 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Glenn Woods. He talks to you, not at you. Be part of the show at 888-97-WOODS. This is Wake Up Wyoming on K2 Radio.
It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off to the phones we go. Laramie, Wyoming. Greg has been waiting by. Sorry to make you wait so long, Greg. Thanks for hanging in there.
Hey, thanks, Glenn.
Absolutely. What you got?
Well, I've been listening all week, and I've been, reading Tom Lubenow, the Cowboy State Daily. What your guests have been saying is that it's the will of the people. When you hear the will of the people, to me, they missed a certain part of it called the Constitution. And we're a republic. And so, the will of the people is a pure democracy.
Right.
And a lot of these bills that they're passing end up costing the taxpayer money. And I would invite you to look at the Attorney General's budget to see how much money they're actually costing by passing bad bills. So what this special session to me seems like is that they're trying to run the Freedom Caucus or whatever. They're trying to have votes and campaign using our tax dollars as a special session.
Okay, so what about the, let me play devil's advocate with you, though. Okay, so let's say there's some elected representatives and their constituents say, we would like you to get the following things done. And so we have a regular session of the House and Senate, and those members of the House and Senate get those things done. But then the governor vetoes it. So, do we have a special session they could have overridden the veto if they had stayed a few more days, apparently, but they didn't. So, do they have a special session to go back to make sure that the will of their constituents is in play?
Again, the will of the if you get elected and you're not understanding the Constitution and you're making poorly formed bills, the person should say, hey, wait a second, these are unconstitutional, and take a stand on the Constitution. I don't see anybody doing it. This is
now. Okay. What do you think is unconstitutional?
If you look at some of the governor's vetoes, He does say something about the Constitution and also about taking away, I mean, the gun bill was absolutely poorly formed. Tom Lubenow does a great job of that in the Cowboy State Daily, analyzing why these things are terrible. And again, to me, I've seen a decline in the legislature. It seems to me, you know, in the quality of the people that are sent. I think a guy by the name of McGuire used to represent you in your area.
Yes, he did.
He was really pretty good. But the people that have replaced them, that wear silver crosses and spout all these social things, aren't really forming bills that are good for the people, and they cost us money in the long term. So we should not be electing people that cost us money, that are basically passing bills unconstitutional. And they know it.
Okay. Well, but this is where there's going to be some disagreement there, because those people that are on the other side of the argument, like in the Freedom Caucus, would say, no, what we're passing is constitutional. So this, at some point, you got to go fight this out. Is it or isn't it? In your opinion, a lot of this stuff is not. The governor says a lot is not. But then there's a whole other side of the argument saying, yes, it is. So how do you think we go hash this out?
Well, what I'm saying is that what was listened to on the floor is that a lot of people were saying, hey, these are unconstitutional. They're unconstitutional. But because it is an election year, you can pretty much see the people that said it was unconstitutional voted for it anyway. Because, again, they'll be castigated if they don't. Again, I really do see a decline in the abilities of the legislature, since all they're deciding to do is deregulate guns and it blooms. I see no other discussion being had.
Okay. I think that where a big disagreement comes in, no, I understand your take on it. Now, what I want you to understand is there's people out there who disagree with you and think that what has been done, what was passed, was constitutional. So my question to you is, if we have a disagreement on what is or isn't constitutional, where do we go to hash that out?
Well, we should hire better legislatures, but if we don't, we end up in the judicial system costing us taxpayers money.
Okay, but at some point we have to have this discussion. In other words, just because you say it's unconstitutional doesn't mean it is. We have to have this discussion somewhere. The governor cannot just say, well, that's unconstitutional. No, isn't it? The governor cannot just say, well, that's unconstitutional, and we're done with it. There's people who disagree with him. So we have to go somewhere to have this discussion and figure out if it is or isn't. So that's where, once again, as a republic, we get together and have that discussion. That's also why we have courts. We have a system set up for a reason so we can have these disagreements.
But if we're electing legislatures on the will of the people, remember, pure, unadulterated democracy is not what we wanted. It's not what our country is founded on. Pure, unadulterated democracy will result in terrible legislation.
Well, we're not. But we're not disagreeing with that. Well, okay. Now, to me, though, when we had the older legislative crowd, they were doing a lot of things that they shouldn't have been doing. And I am actually glad for some of the things, not everything, but some of the things that the Freedom Caucus brought in, because what they're working for, in part, is limiting the size of government and reducing its power and how much government spent. The older legislative branch that you were talking,
reducing the size of government. No, I don't think so.
No, actually, the government in Wyoming was much bigger just a few years ago, a lot bigger. And the newer people that we have have worked really hard to greatly reduce the size of government and therefore cut spending quite a bit.
I see. I'll just say this. The current Wyoming government is getting what it asked for. I've heard Driscoll say we pass laws all the time that are unconstitutional. Let the courts figure it out. So again, it's incumbent on us. You talk about being an informed voter.
Right.
Look at the amount of money these bills cost you long term. The current legislature doesn't care because they figure nobody's going to watch. I mean, that's what they figure.
Okay, I'll bring back to you though. I'll still come back. Just a few years ago, your Wyoming government was much bigger and cost much more money than it does today.
Well, you can cover up a lot of things with the ARPA money, and we'll see what happens when all that's over. again, I don't consider, again, when I look at what's going on and when I see who has been elected based on the past couple of years, they are definitely a decline in the legislation in Wyoming.
Okay, and if you think so, that's your opinion. I honestly think that we've done a pretty good job in getting some people in there who will do what I want to do. Greatly reduce the size and power of Wyoming government is what I want to do. I want to see it much smaller than it is today.
I want to see it fund public schools because those are the best things.
I actually don't like public schools. I like the fact that the governor just signed a bill making sure that we have school choice in Wyoming because I think that's much better and would be much cheaper too.
Pretty much public schools are the king, and
they're falling apart. They're a mess.
College, and look at where you went to high school.
They're a mess. The public schools are a mess. Yeah, public schools are a mess these days, and I'm so glad the parents have a choice. Back then,
a lot of them were working in Wyoming. So,
I say the best, again, Greg. They produced you. How could they say that? That that's the best that they produced you. Anyway, Greg, listen.
Florida.
I know. Florida schools. When I was going through Florida schools, they were horrible. They're much better now. School choice is the way to go. All right, I got to run for news time. Thanks for hanging on through that whole break. I know I ranted on where you were on hold for a while. I got to run to local news. Update on your weather forecast. You and I get back into it. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. You can talk about what I'm talking about. Change the subject. Fine by me. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
The only show broadcasting from a bunker under Devil's Tower. Hey, it's cold down here. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods, 6 a.m. weekdays on AM 1030 and FM 95.1.
8:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. All right, 888-97 Woods the phone number. That's 888-97 WOODS. John, who's up in Gillette. I think Greg causes car accidents for those listeners who are in the car. Well, I will say this. And I've complimented him on this before. Greg and I have some pretty big disagreements, but at least he's not Dave from San Francisco. Dave's an obnoxious jerk, which is why I hang up on Dave. But at least Greg gets into a debate. Now, Greg, if you're still listening, I was thinking about something during the course of the break I decided to hit you with, which you're not going to quite expect me to come at you from this angle. Greg kept talking about Wyoming in America as a republic, not a direct democracy, which is true. But, Greg, when you use the word republic, I don't think that word means what you think it means. So let me explain it to you. First off, we have a monarchy. Now, monarchy is one guy rules everybody. Okay? And you are going to comply. If the monarch decides to join a religion, you're joining that religion too. If he changes his religion, so are you. Your stuff does not belong to you. It belongs to him. You work for him. Everybody does. He owns the country. And everybody bows, literally, to the monarch. You will think the way he thinks. Or else. That's a monarchy. Now, an oligarchy is the same thing, but it's a rule by a committee. So there's a group of people who runs the country, but they do everything that the monarch would do, just as a group. Then there's a direct democracy. Now, direct democracy is rule of the majority. Majority tells you what to do, whether you like it or not. So if the majority decides, hey, we're going to vote to take your car away and give it to the guy on the other side of town, they will. If the majority thinks that you have too much money, they'll vote to take your money away. And they can, because they're the majority. That's what the majority does. That's a democracy. It's rule of the majority. which still means you are being ruled over. But America is a republic. And what that means is the only person in charge of you is you. And government's job is to protect that. So when it comes to public schools, Greg loves public schools. Yeah, but that's not your decision, Greg. Parents will decide what school is best for their kids. If they want a public school, that's where they'll go. If they want a private school, that's where they're going. If they want a homeschool, that's what they do. That's school choice, which now Wyoming has. That's what a republic is. Individuals get to make their own decisions, and government's job is to protect that. Government is not here to tell you what to do. Government is not here to provide for you. Government is here to protect your right to live as you want to live. Now, there's a few basic rules. Don't murder. Don't steal. Things like that anybody can understand. Other than that, go do what you want. So, the Constitution right to carry a gun. You have the right to carry a defensive weapon. We always see the right to bear arms as a gun, but bearing arms can be pepper spray, a club, nunchucks. You have a right to carry something to defend yourself should you ever be assaulted by somebody. And as we know, that does happen. People do get attacked. So it's going to happen. At some point, somebody today will be attacked by somebody else somewhere. And that person, the victim, has the right to defend themselves. And if they want to carry some kind of a weapon so they can defend themselves, they're allowed to do that. And that is a guaranteed right in the Constitution. And so when government starts to throw up all sorts of different barriers, yeah, but you can't carry this and you can't carry it at that place. Well, what are the limits of this? This is what we have to discuss. So you want to put a limit on that? Okay. What kind of limit? Because remember, that individual has the right to defend themselves. And if they want to carry a gun, they can. And don't punish the law-abiding citizen for what the criminal does. And that's oftentimes what gun control laws do. Gun control laws don't affect the criminal. The criminal doesn't care about the law. Gun control laws affect law-abiding citizens. So why would you punish law-abiding citizens who just want to protect themselves? But you see, again, we're in a republic where people have the right to make their own decisions, and government's job is to protect that. That even goes to things like Biden's push to get us into electric vehicles. Well, Mr. President, it's none of your business what I drive or where I drive. That's not your business. Okay. When Biden wants to get rid of gas stoves in people's home, what kind of stove I put in my home is not your business, Mr. President. You don't get to decide that. I live in a republic, which means I get to live the way I want to live. There's a few basic rules. I can't murder, I can't steal, a few things like that. But I get to live the way I want to live, and government's job is to protect that. Okay? They're not here to tell us what to do. They're not here to provide for us. They're here to make sure that we have these freedoms and liberties. They can take care of a few basic things. Roads and bridges, courts to settle our disputes, police and fire. They take care of a few basic things like this. Other than that, they're supposed to stay out of it. That's the purpose of a republic. So when Greg kept throwing out, but we're a republic, well then let's act like one. Being a republic means school choice. Parents get to decide where they're going to send their kids. Government cannot tell them, you have to send your kids here. Being a republic means if you choose to bear arms, to carry a gun, or whatever other weapon, because you think that you need that personal protection, then you have that right to do it. The only rule is that you need to be a law-abiding citizen. Okay. Criminals will deal with the criminals, but the law-abiding citizens can do what they want to do in that respect. And again, what car you drive, where you live, what kind of appliances you have in your house, the list goes on and on. What kind of health insurance you have, not the government's business. Do you have health insurance at all? not the government's business. That is up to you. Government's job is to make sure, like I've heard people have a right to health care. A right is not a product or a service provided by the government. You have the right to purchase health insurance if you choose. If the doctor is a quack, government will take care of him for you. If the health insurance company reneges on their contract, government will step in and take care of them for you. Okay? But you have the right to pursue your health care as you see fit. It is your responsibility to yourself and to your family. It is not government's job to take care of it for you or tell you what you can and can't. It's one of the reasons I was opposed to Obamacare. One of the reasons is government's going to come along and tell me that I have to carry health insurance and what it's going to cover. It's none of your business if I carry health insurance at all. And if I do, what it covers. That's not government's business. Stay out of it. That's what a republic is. A republic is not government taking care of it. It's personal responsibility. Your life is yours. Now, that's going to take a lot of maturity and responsibility. Okay? That's all on you. But that's what being a free person in a free country really is. 8:45. Let's Wake Up Wyoming.
And we're back. Sorry, we were busy tricking pescatarians into eating Rocky Mountain oysters. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
Well, Frank, it wouldn't be a Friday without a couple technical difficulties. It looks like we've lost Glenn for the moment, but why don't you go ahead with sports and I'll pull something up for our listeners at the end of the hour, okay?
All right, sounds good. In women's junior college basketball, Casper College was eliminated from the national tournament at the Ford Center in Casper, losing to Northwest Florida State 76-69 in front of another big crowd of CC supporters. It was great to see. T-Birds had a great start to the game, hitting 7 3-pointers in the first quarter and shot 66% from the floor in the first half. But a 13-point lead evaporated as Casper endured a brutal shooting performance in the second half, going 4 of 23 from the field. That's 17%. They were led in scoring by Anna Cheney with 20 points and Andy Schuster at 17. T-Birds finished the year at 29-6. Also in the national tournament yesterday, the Gila Monsters from Eastern Arizona. That's their mascot. Beat Collin College, the 4th seed, 61-60. Gulf Coast from Florida over Southern Idaho, 65-55. And Three Rivers, Missouri over Shelton State from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, 68-50. Today at the Ford Center, the top seed Hutchinson, Kansas plays New Mexico Junior College at noon. Wabash Valley from Illinois takes on Odessa, Texas at 2:15. Gulf Coast meets Eastern Arizona at 4:30. And at 6:45 tonight is Northwest Florida meeting Three Rivers. All those games at the Ford Center in Casper. Women's college basketball at the Division I level, the Wyoming Cowgirls will host the Coyotes from South Dakota in the Super 16 of the WNIT. Cowgirls are 17-14 after that 16-point win over Texas San Antonio in the second round of the WNIT back on Sunday. South Dakota's 23-12. Then they down Northern Arizona in the second round to get to this point. It will be a 6:30 start from the AA in Laramie tonight. At the men's NCAA basketball tournament, the Mountain West Conference is out. San Diego State was humiliated and eliminated by Connecticut. 82-52. UConn is the top seed in the tournament, and they looked every bit like the defending national champions that they are. The first number 1 seed is out, and that's North Carolina, who lost to Alabama 89-87. Illinois edged Iowa State 72-69, and Clemson bounced Arizona 2 seed 77-72. There are some intriguing games today. Purdue, a number 1 seed, will play Gonzaga, 5 seed. Houston, a number 1 seed, will tangle with Blue Blood Duke. Marquette, a 2 seed, draws North Carolina State. And Tennessee will take on Creighton in a Sweet 16 game in a battle between a number 2 seed and a number 3 seed. Major League Baseball, how bad are the Colorado Rockies going to be this year? So check this one out. Yesterday, or last night, on opening day, they lost to Arizona on the road 16-1. The Diamondbacks scored 14 runs in the third inning. 14! Rocky starting pitcher Kyle Freeland was awful. He surrendered 10 hits and 10 earned runs in 2 1/3 innings of work. And there's only 161 more games to go for the Rockies. How about that? All right, Mary, will you tell us what to do now?
Okay, Frank, well, I'll tell you that last part was just difficult to listen to. I'll go ahead and let you go. We'll talk to you again at the end of last hour. Now, folks, remember, if you missed the top of the show, no, you didn't. We are always available to listen to on demand at wakeupwyo.com or on the Wake Up Wyoming app. I'll play out with a little social justice warrior for the end of the hour.
To another thrilling episode of Social Justice Warrior. On this week's episode, the bad guy is getting away. If only the Social Justice Warrior had his own version of the Batmobile. But, you know, more like a Eco-mobile or something like that. There's something that runs on unicorn farts, whatever. My evil nemesis, average white guy, has just done the most dastardly deed.
You just hate that diesel-powered truck he bought, don't you?
Get worse, he named his truck Gary. So that's assuming the truck's gender. And then he went out and bought those truck nuts and put them underneath the trailer hitch.
So what are you going to do about it? Sneak out in the middle of the night and neuter the truck?
He's getting away.
He's going to the store to buy some bread.
Quick, to the binary mobile.
Oh, sorry. The what?
Well, if Batman can have his Batmobile.
You mean your mom's car?
Don't tell her I'm taking it. She was really pissed last time.
So you're going to chase a diesel truck with an all-electric car?
Well, sure. Why not?
Well, for one thing, it's still charging.
Well, that could take all night.
Oh, it will. I'm sure the average white guy will be back from buying a loaf of bread by then.
It's so hard being an eco-friendly crime fighter. Join us next week as our social justice warrior chases down the bad guy in his binary mobile or whatever. Wake Up Wyoming, my name is Glenn Woods, so I'm going through failed predictions and promises. Some of them are coming from this year. Things that you were told, promised, that were predicted, that just didn't happen. And the experts are always befuddled by these things, and that they continue to make failed predictions. But in order to illustrate the point, I'm going back in time and picking on some of my favorite things. And let me see. I left off with, now I'll go back to 1988. The Maldive Islands will be underwater by 2018. They're not. It was predicted in the year 2000, children wouldn't know what snow is. You better go explain it to them, because there it is. By 2002, famine in 10 years, if we don't give up eating fish, meat, and dairy, we're going to have famine. So you have to give up eating fish, meat, and dairy, or we're all going to have massive famine once again. 2004 was predicted Britain will be Siberia just like Siberia by 2024. The Arctic will be ice-free by 2018. Remember that prediction? Even Al Gore repeated. Now, some people say Al Gore made the prediction. He was repeating the prediction. But I remember Al Gore saying that the Arctic will be ice-free by 2018. And yet, it's not. By the way, there are periods of time that the Arctic does lose ice. And when it is losing ice, of course, I see satellite images being put on social media by the cult of climate change. See? This is what we were talking about, and we're causing this. When, if you take a look at Earth's history as we know it, there's times that the North and South Pole extend almost all the way to the equator. And this planet is a big frozen ball. Look at something called Snowball Earth. Look up Snowball Earth. Okay, so there's that. But as near as we can tell, throughout most of Earth's history, which is about 4.5 billion years, as best we can tell, throughout most of Earth's history, the planet has not had polar ice caps. So polar ice caps on this planet are actually a rare thing. Okay. For those people who like to talk about the way it's supposed to be and what's normal, which is nonsense, but if we're going to, let's take that as a premise. Let's say that there is a normal thing for the planet Earth. Well, if you're going to go that direction, then we shouldn't have ice caps, because most of the time this planet doesn't. So when the ice does retreat back, that will happen on occasion, and sometimes it gains ground. So in the past couple of years, the North and South Pole have actually gained ice. Yeah, there have been times within our lifetime that it's lost it, but then there's been times it's gained it back. Recently, it's gained it back. But it was predicted in 2008 the Arctic would be ice-free by 2018. Well, also in 2008, climate genius Al Gore predicted an ice-free Arctic by 2013. Again, he was repeating what he had heard. And by that 2013 prediction, it would be ice-free in the Arctic summer. To be clear about what he said, in the Arctic winter, there would be some ice, but in the Arctic summer, there wouldn't be any, is what he said. Well, 2013 came and went, Al, and I would love to know why the news media doesn't jump all over him. Polar bears are supposed to be extinct by now. All right, moving on. 2009. UK Prime Minister says we have 50 days to save the planet from a catastrophe. Well, I'm so glad we got through that one. That was a real tough time, wasn't it? Wasn't it? I don't remember. The 2013, it was predicted that the Arctic would be ice-free by 2015. In 2014, we had only 500 days before climate chaos. And let's see, I think it was, now this goes back to 1968. This was added into the list I'm reading. Oh, I remember this. Remember the book, The Population Bomb? Paul Ehrlich. Overpopulation will spread worldwide. Then we go into deep famine and stuff like that. Well, and then, let's see, world would use up all of its natural resources. That was supposed to happen by now. Oh, remember it started in the 1966, went into the 1970s, that oil would be gone in 10 years. They predicted in 1966 that oil would be gone in 10 years. In 1972, they said we would run out of oil in 20 years. In 1977, the Department of Energy says oil will peak in the 1990s. Then in 1980, they said oil would peak in 2000. Then in 1996, they said oil will peak in 2020. Then in 2002, they said oil would peak in 2010. You see how they keep kicking the can down the road there? Well, hang on. I'm still just getting warmed up. Wake up,
Local and mobile across Wyoming and beyond with the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. This is AM 1030 K2 Radio.
Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Digging something out of mothballs here. Two things coming your way. All right, let me back up and explain just a little bit. Trigger warning.
Warning. This show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
And at the same time, before I get into this, I have to issue a sarcasm alert.
Sarcasm alert. In your face.
Okay, you have been warned in every possible way, right? One of my favorite things to do when I first started really doing talk radio way back when is I like the idea of satire, parody, coming up with bits to play to make a point by illustrating it through having just an absurd good time to make a point. It's much easier to listen. It's much more palatable. I get tired of talk radio that's the same angry old people just complaining into the mic day after day about the same things. It gets old, it gets stale, it gets irritating. I can't even listen to it. And I do talk radio. So I love writing parody bits and having fun with friends of mine, recording some of this stuff. I like to do multiple voices on it myself. Haven't had a chance much to do that just because of the workload that comes with this particular program here. So what I'm doing here, first off, is I'm digging one out of mothballs, but there's another one coming. A friend of mine suggested a series called The Woke Farmer or The Woke Rancher. And basically it's running a ranch or farm in Wyoming with someone who is a liberal woke, And how would that look? How would that work? Yeah. So we had a lot of funny ideas with that. So that's coming your way. But then there was this one. Working with some of my friends like Fire Pit Paul, we came up with the idea of a superhero, or so he hopes to be, who is a social justice warrior, or so he wants to be.
The world has become a dark and foreboding place. Even though it's one of the richest, most comfortable, peaceful times in human history, no longer does a man have to worry about things like Black Plague and invasion by hordes of nomads who wish to rape their cattle and cook their women. I'm sorry, what was I saying? Oh, right, dark times. Well, since famines and disease are gone, freedom and prosperity covers most of the planet. Except where there's socialism. A man is left with nothing much to struggle over. So he has to invent it in his own mind. In a cellar of an American university, a 21-year-old snowflake with a degree in societal studies and theater is drawing with a crayon on a coloring book.
Oh, that's it. No longer will I hide down here. The world needs to be saved. Victims of the oppressed need to be unoppressed or something. I'll need a costume and a name. Social Justice Man. No, that might alienate those who don't gender identify as men and those who are oppressed by men or triggered by them, I'll have to come up with a non-binary, gender-neutral name. And my costume shall have a cape. No, Superman had a cape, and he was a white guy from Kansas, so no. I'll need to hide my white privilege behind my mask. But no cultural appropriation, and no leather. Do that, Chafes. Only organic materials. Oh, this is a lot to remember. Where's my crayons?
Thus, we witness the birth of Earth's newest hero. Where's Stanley when you need him? Oh, right. Man's dead. Anyway, join us on the continuing adventures of whatever his non-binary, gender, non-specific name is going to be.
So we do have we put this series together. I came up, it has to have a villain. If it's a superhero, he has to have a villain. And so the villain is average white guy. To me, it's a much better way of making all of these points. Because I don't know about you, like I said a moment ago, I get really tired of turning on the radio and it's the same people complaining about the same things over and over again every single day. It gets tiring, it grates on people, and there's so many other topics to talk about as well. Just makes it easier. One of the things I liked when I was at the Chugwater Chili Festival, the number of people who just walked up and said hi, which I love. And they said they appreciated that the show not only was informative, but they liked the humor that went with it because it just made it easier, especially first thing in the morning. It just made it a whole lot easier to get through the day thinking about these topics where you could laugh while you were thinking about it at the same time, which I agree with. I do think now that Limbaugh's gone and some of the other talk hosts have gotten a bit older now, that there's a new generation coming up. A lot of them are on social media with podcasts and videocasts and so on. And I'm looking for that next change in talk radio. While it's still the message that you're looking for and the news and information you're looking for is delivered in a different way. Because I think the way it's being done right now is stale. And it just needs some kind of revitalization to not just keep the audience that it has, but attract that new audience that it's going to need for the next few generations.
We return you now to the thrilling adventures of... okay, we're not sure what his superhero name is yet, but he's going to fight for social justice and junk like that, so... Anyway, we return you now to, okay, screw it. Here's the little dork in the rainbow spandex, which he said he wasn't going to wear because he doesn't have the butt for it, but no, honestly, he doesn't. He waits, lurking in the bushes, because he was sure he could smell a crime in action.
You! Stop what you're doing at once! Do you mean to destroy the planet?
I was wondering if you were going to hide in the bushes all day. Figured you just wanted a burger and were afraid to ask.
You saw me over there?
You're kind of hard to miss in those rainbow tights. Do your parents know you're running around like that?
Parent? Sir, I am an adult.
If you say so.
Now put that spatula down. You're grilling an innocent animal and pumping CO2 into the air.
I'm just grilling burgers. Besides, what are you doing? Are you hitting me? Is that supposed to be hitting?
This is exhausting.
You look pale. Have a seat. Here. Drink this.
What is this?
Sweet tea.
Isn't that what Southerners drink?
Sure.
You thought you could trick me into racism, did you?
Oh, for the love of...
Well, maybe he wasn't so successful with his first mission, but social justice man will not be deterred. And we'll return next week to tackle another villain.
Honestly, you don't have the butt for those tights.
I ordered that Buns of Steel video from Amazon. I'm sure I can fill it out.
Opinions, we had to build the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app to hold them all. Free download from AM 1030 K2 Radio.
Wake Up Wyoming, my name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. City slickers are confused. Those rest stops that have been closed to save Wyoming a little bit of money have been reopened, all but one reopened for tourist season. Which is confusing to the tourists because in the cities where they live, people just go right on the sidewalk. San Francisco is particularly bad. Denver's not much better. New York, dear Lord. So the tourists want to know, why go into a bathroom where everybody's been sitting their keister on the same seat, who knows how many people all day long? And there's COVID, you know. When there's a perfectly good sidewalk to go on. We people out west are weird. So after I got done with this, again, you blame Walton Rosette. I was going to change topics. He reminds me that there's actually a poop app for San Francisco. Now, on occasion, there's a gentleman from San Francisco that calls this program. And he always likes to act superior. He lives in San Francisco, you know, a very progressive city. And how we just do things backwards here in Wyoming. He calls the program now and then. I just love that he does, considering what a mess they've made out of San Francisco and other cities like that, these progressives. Yes, there's not only an app, but you can also view it on just your website if you're just using a computer. Headline I have in front of me is San Francisco's poop statistics. Are we measuring the wrong thing? But anyway, there's a map here. Just like you, if you ever taken Google Maps and tagged a place, so you know where that is again, if you ever want to go there again, right? Okay, that little icon they have to show that you've marked a place on the map, those are all brown. And it shows you where people are finding feces. So if you're walking down the sidewalk in San Francisco and you find some human waste there, you can go ahead and tag it on this app. That way other people know where it is. So you would think that would be so people could avoid it. Oh, but no, there's no avoiding it. Because according to this, most of San Francisco is a big brown turd. Story I have in front of me. In this post, I'm going to cover two kinds of excrement. I'm editing his language. The first kind of feces of the streets of San Francisco that I'm sure everyone knows about is dominant in the news coverage. That's the human kind. Second kind is faulty data and analyzing it. Okay, so he wants to go ahead and just analyze the data for what's real here. And then he has a graph here, a chart, a graph. Human feces incidents by year in San Francisco. Imagine having to do this for where you live. And it starts in 2011. And it adds it up. Reported cases of human feces being found on the sidewalks of San Francisco. So in 2011, there were 5,547. Now the number continues to grow year after year. We get to 2018, there were 28,084 reported cases, right? And it keeps getting worse. That's like a 400% increase, he says. Wow. So anyway, if you want to go take a look at different kinds of maps that show this, not just for San Francisco, but for other cities. Oh, here's another one from the, oh, gross. Okay, so basically the city is just a big, brown smear. It's just horrible. In fact, I'm going to see if I can just click on a Google Maps real quick. Yeah, that doesn't look good. Okay, so anyway, this is what cities have to do. Now, I bring this problem up because remember now,
here in Wyoming, when we closed some of those rest stops, people used them anyway. And it became very much like in some of these major cities where this is a problem. Now, a while ago, I put up an article which was the difference. I compared New York City to Glen Rock, Wyoming. Because like our friend in San Francisco, I just get so sick and tired of people from some of these bigger cities, bigger states, looking at us here in Wyoming and, oh my God, those poor people way out there. Poor people? Really? And I compared what it's like living in Glen Rock to New York City. Glen Rock doesn't have the rat problems. Oh, you can find some little feces on the sidewalks in Glen Rock, but it's usually because some pronghorn walk through the area. It's just not the same thing. Don't have the traffic problems, don't have the crime in Glen Rock. Cost of living is so much lower. Don't even have a state income tax there. No bureaucracy, no mafia. The list goes on and on. You know, you can build a home in Glen Rock and not have to pay off various mob bosses and city bureaucrats and politicians in order to get your home built. You can just go ahead and build your home. Yeah, there's nobody to pay off and bribe. So I just went on and on and on about all the different advantages to living in a place like Glen Rock, Wyoming, as compared to New York City. So anyway. Chet and Yoder. Maybe the guy from San Francisco. I wonder if I should share. You're right, Chet. If I share the app with the guy from San Francisco, I really haven't done this to him. Whenever he's called, I've just defended, Wyoming, saying he's wrong because I think from now on when he calls, which he does on occasion, it's rare, but he calls on occasion, I will just point out, you're really going to call and try to criticize us about whatever his latest criticism is, considering the mess that you've made of San Francisco, that your progressive ideas have made of San Francisco. One of many cities that I used to look at and think, I would love to visit there, I would love to live there, I want to experience that city. But as the years went by, I'm just looking at it going, I have no desire to even go anymore because of the mess they've made of the place. The same mess, by the way, they were making of Wyoming highway rest stops when we closed them.
Listen to Glenn Woods anywhere you roam with the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. This is AM 1030 K2 Radio.
Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining. Gillette John asking, can we revoke Biden's permit to impersonate a president? Oh, yes, at any time. I'd be happy to do that. Not sure the procedures there, but let's go. Not a problem at all. I wanted to thank people who push green energy, as they call it, because they don't understand that while the damage has been done, of course, to the oil and gas and coal industry, but they don't realize they cannot shut those industries down. Now, they keep saying, keep it in the ground. We can't use this stuff. Got to keep it in the ground. Because they misunderstand what that stuff is and how it's used. And yes, there was a time it caused massive amounts of pollution, but here in the United States, not anymore, really. But they think, okay, we're going to get off of coal, gas, and oil. We're going to keep it in the ground. Okay, if you want to do that, fine, we'll do that. All right. Just so you understand, that means no electric cars, no hybrid cars either. Okay? You're not going to be able to have those things. You're not going to be riding a bicycle either. I'll explain why. No computers, no tablets, no air conditioning, no heating in the wintertime. Okay. I mean, there's so many things that we do. No food. Oh, by the way, no food. Yeah, I'm sorry about the food thing. And no water to drink as far as fresh water you're not going to be able to have any of that. Well, see, everything that I mentioned without coal, gas, and oil, it cannot exist. It can't. Well, let's take a look at, for example, your electric cars that you want. Well, in order to have an electric car, those things are extraordinarily lightweight, and a lot of the material is not metals, but like plastics and carbon fibers and so on. In other words, petroleum products. The tubing, also the coverings for the wire, so there's wire all through it. That's plastic. The metal inside the wiring and all of the other things that make an electric car run, you can't produce them without petroleum products. And many of them are a direct product of petroleum. Also, you got to grease the vehicle in order for it to run, and that's more oil there too. So, and that's just the electric vehicle. Now let's move on to what produces a lot of the electricity. You cannot have wind turbines and solar panels without petroleum products, because you see those products are made with petroleum. So if you want solar panels and wind turbine blades and so on, you have to have petroleum products. And the metals that go into it, that's mining too. And it's not just that we need petroleum products to mine the metals, but in order to melt the metals, to make the metal parts, we have to use things like coal. Yeah, because you have to get stuff up to a certain temperature, right? Yeah, sorry about all of this. I know you guys want to go completely, I mean, we're not going to use any coal, gas, and oil. We're not going to use any of this stuff. Well, in order to produce all of this stuff that you want, I mentioned food, didn't I? Yeah, you see, in order to get food to you, we have to farm. And if you're thinking, well, we're just not going to farm using like diesel-powered tractors. Oh, you want to go all electric? Oh, that's fine. But as I just pointed out with your electric cars, without petroleum products, it's impossible to create those things. Okay, because they are made directly from petroleum products. So you have to drill for oil, and natural gas and coal are needed too in order to create the products that you're using in order to farm, and then distribute all of that to the stores and restaurants and so on. Oh, by the way, your tablets, your iPhones, your computers, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, much of that is made out of lightweight plastics and wiring and computer chips and so on, all of which are a direct result of coal, gas, and mainly petroleum products. And you're not going to have any of these things if it's not for petroleum. It's just, it doesn't exist. It's made directly from petroleum products. So I wanted to think earlier, because the Keystone XL has apparently now been permanently shut down. They're not going to at any point, even though they've built most of it, they're not going to restart it. All of that work went into building most of it. Now they're not going to, okay. So that gets permanently shut down. But that's why I was thanking those people, environmentalists who work so hard to shut it down, for supporting the trucking industry and the locomotive industry, because that's how most of that oil is going to get down to Texas now, which is a much more dangerous and dirtier way to do it. But you are supporting all of those jobs by doing it in that way. Now, I know you guys didn't think you were supporting the trucking industry or the locomotive industry, but you are. And for those of you who wanted to get rid of a carbon footprint, you've created a greater carbon footprint. So you know. So thank you for that. You're doing a great job. Wake up, Wyoming.